On today's show, that's right, I'm back to the future in the past. What if the Dallas Mavericks won Game 3 against the Los Angeles Clippers in the playoffs in 2021?
This is already heartbreaking, but we're going to do the what if because there's a lot of what ifs that could come from that.
A lot of things. We'll get to it on today's Locked On Mavs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor at Mavs.com. The What If Warlock, the one we're thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Okay. Today. Are you doing that?
Yeah.
I was like, man, your soundboard's going out. Your baby. But today's what if is so. This is one of the more frustrating ones for me because when I think back, so we did a Monday nights, we try to shoot for dang it, we haven't even talked about Monday.
We're recording this a week in advance because I'm gonna be out. Just letting everybody pull back the curtain a little bit.
Pulling back the curtain.
So if something has happened, we won't talk about it yet. Because we don't know.
Exactly. But we got to ask the question in our first like YouTube live Q&A of like, hey, what's the best moment, best game, best like atmosphere in AAC that you've been to? And we talked about the Dirk stuff and the nostalgia of 30K, his last game in Dallas. Look, those were crazy, fun moments that you're like, we're so blessed to be there. But that game 3 that the Mavericks won the first 2 games against the Clippers, and they come back to Dallas and they have that run in the first part of the first quarter. I have never been in a basketball arena that had that type of atmosphere. And I just remember standing there in the media, standing because I couldn't see over the top. I was with our friend Charks, and we were standing. John was saying we were both standing up. I had my hands on my head. It was like, there's no way this is happening right now. And it was just one of the coolest, craziest moments. And if you could just end the season right there, sign me up.
Yeah, so it's a huge what if. Like you said, the Mavericks at one point were up 30-11 against the Clippers in the first quarter, already being up 2-0 in the series, a massive one. So what if the Mavericks had gone on to win that game? No team has ever lost a series going up 3-0. We had talked about even all the statistics at the time. You can go back on YouTube if you want and go look at some of our freezing cold takes about, game 3 and that series. If you win 2 games on the road, the numbers are overwhelmingly in your favor. If you win game 3, it's automatic that you win the series. There's just no precedent for a team to lose a series. So there's so many different what ifs we're going to get into in this one. But yeah, let's just talk about going into that game. They're up 2-0. And both of the games were on the road. It was the first home playoff game where you're just feeling like, okay, this is real. And the Mavericks felt like the team. They felt like they weren't the underdog anymore. It weren't like the plucky Mavericks going up against this high-powered offense and defense of the Clippers. Just this, Kawhi Leonard, the Finals MVP 2-time. Paul George, the guy that came in and has a lot to redeem himself from last playoff run. Like, this team is ready. They made the coaching change, and Ty Lue is in there, and they have all these wings and all these guys to defend Luka, and they should be the best team to defend Luka. And all of a sudden, they're bleeding, just absolutely bleeding after being down, losing both games at home. Ty Lue has that quote about, well, it's easier for role players and players to play in LA, and they didn't have
pressure.
There's no pressure. There's no crowd in LA too. So that was the wild thing about it. The Mavs won this essentially neutral site game, basically, because there was no crowd. They come back, and this Dallas crowd is just in it, and they're just ready to go and crazy, basically. So the Mavs started this game.
Luka's first home playoff game too. Like, there was such a buzz in the arena
right.
and going into that game of like Luka's first playoff game in Dallas. Obviously, you just said they won those first 2 games, and everybody's just like, "How's this game going to start? How's Dallas? Do the Clippers have it within them to answer after going down 0-2 and all the storylines that surround them from last year?" And then this game starts, and it was honestly the best start you could ever ask for Dallas.
Yeah, you mentioned Luka's first home playoff game because the season before they were in the bubble, and so the Mavericks had never played at home with Luka in the playoffs yet. So this is the first time fans were going to see. They had a lot of fans had probably not been to a game that season because there'd just been limited capacity, and because of the season before there wasn't a lot of fans and all that kind of stuff. There's just so many different factors to go into this game, and so we were wondering how are they going to start, and how they started this game may have determined the rest of the game, according to I think to us, because if the energy just gets to be too much for this inexperienced, somewhat young Mavericks team especially compared to the Clippers, who are the oldest team in the league that year. So you're like, okay, are they just going to come in and the moment's just going to be too big for them? Is it just going to be too big? And it was the exact opposite to start. They start the game out 28-11 and go out to this run. They're just hitting threes. If I'm looking at the box score right now, Luka comes in and hits a jumper, hits a 3. And then he hits another 3. Hardaway hits a 3. Luka hits another 3. Porzingis hits a little jumper, and then he gets the and one and scores. Porzingis a 3, Maxey a 3, Hardaway a 3, Dorian a layup at the rim. And then the big change. This is kind of the big what if to me for this whole thing, and it was actually in the game. Rick Carlilse decides at about the 5-minute mark in the first quarter to take out Luka and put in Brunson. And from that point, the Mavericks are up 28-11 in the first quarter. 11 points. They'd only scored 11 points at that point. They take out Luka, and then just all of a sudden, the Clippers just start to come back, and they get closer, and they get closer. And then it becomes an 8-point game, and then it becomes a 7-point game. And now all of a sudden it's within reach, and then Luka comes back for Porzingis with in the 1 minute 30-second mark in the first quarter, and it's only a 7-point game. And the momentum just felt like it had completely swung the other way because they only scored 4 points with Luka off the floor. And it just, again, this is why they need a secondary creator. This is why all these things we've been talking about all offseason, because when Luka was off the floor, they just couldn't score.
That's exactly what it is. It's like, if you want any type of, why should they be going after another, creator, another guy in the backcourt, another guy who can run the offense, get a bucket. You look at that game right there of saying, I think the smaller what if is, or the more defined what if what Rick didn't take Luka out in the first quarter of game 3? Yeah. We're doing the bigger what if of saying, let's just say they won that game. What if Dallas wins game 3, whether Luka stayed in or not? How does that change the rest of the series? And I think we would both say if they won game 3, they're winning the series.
Coming up, let's answer that question. What if they didn't take Luka out? Let's go through and walk through that a little bit. And then, like you said, there's a whole bunch of other questions around this. What would the Mavericks offseason look like? What would Porzingis' perception look like if he had a good season? Would the Mavericks have won the finals, got to the finals? Because the path was not that hard throughout the rest of this. They were winnable series for the Mavericks throughout the rest of this, the Suns, the Jazz, all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Sweatblock. Sweatblock is a new product that is revolutionary, essentially. Isaac's got the deodorant. I got the wipes right here. It's these towelettes. They're clinical strength. They're made by a doctor, recommended by a doctor, a Harvard medical doctor that now I think teaches at BYU. He created this product because he dealt with, sweating, and he just would profusively sweat all the time, and he'd have to just change his clothes, change his, his shirts, and make decisions about his wardrobe and what he's going to wear based on how much he was going to sweat that day. If you don't want to, if you deal with that in your personal life and you don't want to, Sweatblock is the product for you. All you do is you wipe down here, the directions right here, reduce sweating and restore confidence, up to 7 days of protection per use. You just wipe your underarms the night before, and then all of a sudden you're not dealing with the sweat stains. You're not dealing with the pit stains. You're not dealing with the stuff that's going to make you embarrassed or lose your confidence or any of that. You get that back with Sweatblock. So go to sweatblock.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get 20% off. Go try it. Just go try a box and see how it works for you, because they have a dry shirt guarantee. If Sweatblock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. So go check it out at sweatblock.com. Also want to tell you about Theragun. Theragun is a product that helps with the stress of daily life. I know I deal with stress. I'm in one of the best moments, like in seasons of my life right now, and I deal with stress every day. Isaac has 2 small kids under the age of 3. He is dealing with stress literally every waking minute of the day. Theragun helps you with that, and it helps you with rehab and all that kind of stuff. Gen 4 Theragun doesn't just feel good. It gets to the source of pain by releasing tension using Theragun's signature percussive therapy, which goes 60% deeper than just vibration alone. So go get your Theragun. You can try it for 30 days, starting at only $199. Go to therabody.com, THERABODY.com/lockedon. Right now, get your Gen 4 Theragun today. Again, try that Theragun. It has all kinds of different settings. People swear by it. My co-host on Locked On NBA on Fridays, Adam Morris, swears by this product. He loves it. He uses his every single day. Go check it out. Therabody.com/lockedon. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into the what if in this what if.
To what if in the what if.
What if Rick Carlilse didn't take Luka out? What if he just played him through? And there's fatigue reasons. There's just rotation reasons. It wasn't a weird thing rotation-wise. He didn't go out of his way to take Luka out of this quarter, but he decided to kind of hedge his bet a little bit. We already got this lead. We'll take Luka out. So in case the Clippers come back, then we can put Luka back in. He'll be fresher. What would you think if they played him just the rest of the first quarter? So the rest of that 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, he would have to come out at some point. Luka's not, just breaking news, he's not in good enough shape to play all 48. And you know, that's just part of it. I mean, I think that's what we're going to look at when you look at a player as good as Luka is. I mean, he's a top 5 player in the league. So, I mean, it's insane but when you look at areas for him to get better in, this is the one I think we can look back on, whether it's next year or a few years from now, saying, hey, remember those early years? Like, remember the fourth quarters? He would kind of winded. He wasn't the same. Like, he could play all 48, but we already seen him at the end of these games looking tired, looking, a little sloppy with the ball. And that's the level he has to get to eventually in his game. So if he played the entire first, then he's going to have to come out in the, first part of the second for a good chunk of time.
Which we had seen him do in the regular season. That was kind of his rotation. He would play, and before Kristaps Porzingis kind of talked about his minutes and wanted more minutes at the beginning of the game. Remember that whole conversation we had in that season. And so Luka had played most of first quarters throughout, that season. And so that it wasn't until later in the season when Porzingis made that comment and then talked to Rick Carlilse about it that they changed that whole thing and changed Luka's rotation based on what Porzingis wanted. Man, I don't want to be back in that again. But I think if they kept him in, the shooting, I don't know if the shooting was sustainable. The Mavericks were just making so many threes. I think they would have regressed a little bit. But let's say, okay, so it's 11-28 when Luka goes out. Let's say the Clippers they end the quarter with 31 points. I don't think the defense changes if Luka doesn't go out there, right? Like if Luka is not out. I think the Clippers would have come back to earth a little bit and they still would have scored. So the Mavericks end, let's say they score 6 more points in that run. Then all of a sudden it's 38-25. Is that enough to where all of a sudden it doesn't give the Clippers as much confidence that they're going to come back and win this game? Because that's what it kind of comes down to, is the momentum of the game just completely swung back to the Clippers. And is Luka playing 4 more minutes, or what is it? It's literally 3 minutes, because he comes back at the 131 mark. Is him playing 3 more minutes enough to not sway the Clippers' confidence enough? Can they get the lead out to, it was what, 19 at the time? Could they get it out to 20 or something like that?
25 or something. I mean,
is that enough? And I don't think it is.
Yeah. I mean, either way, he's got to come out. Either way, the Mavericks have to, hold the line until Luka comes back. And so I actually don't look at that game and say, I mean, as soon as Luka came out, my dad was blowing up my phone that night saying, why did Rick take out Luka? And, and that's become a storyline. I'm actually not in that camp. I have my criticisms of Rick, but I just don't think that Luka coming out in that moment decided that entire game. I don't, because he would have had
a lot of time when he got taken out. There's 5 minutes left in the first quarter and then 3 more quarters after that. There's a lot of time.
Could he have come back in once they started making a run? Now let's talk about that. But when he came out of the game, I'm fine with that, because you're up by 19 points. If there's ever a time, especially in the first quarter, that you're sitting there saying, you know what, I think we can take Luka out right now. I get all the mindset behind it and let's get him a few minutes of rest right now. Surely we can hold the lead 15-20 while Luka's out. They didn't, but could they have put him back in? I think that's a question too. But let's assume they win the game. Let's do the what if. Yep. What if they win the game? What if they win game 3? We both agree they win the series, therefore setting them up for a second round matchup with the Utah Jazz. How does that series play out?
Whew, that one is fascinating, because we had seen the Mavericks play the Jazz 3 times in that season. If you remember, the first 2 games were the lowest point of the season for the Mavericks. They were coming off the COVID, the whole COVID break the whole COVID outing for all those guys. They dealt with all that, and it was just the lowest point for the Mavericks. They just got absolutely destroyed by that team. And then later in the season, the Mavericks played the Utah Jazz again without Porzingis, actually, and it was completely different. It was a completely different outcome. The Mavericks ended up winning that game. That game was in April, and the Jazz throughout the season started out this incredibly great team, and then slowly just became a little bit more like normal, right? Like just became a little bit more, I don't know, mediocre, basically, of a team.
You are the 2000 Hawks. The 2000 Hawks.
Am I allowed to talk like that on this network? And the Jazz had their full complement of guys. Mitchell and Gobert started. Conley was there. Bojan Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal. That was the starting lineup. Ingles, Clarkson, Favors, George Niang. All those guys played. So, and by the way, guess who was on that roster that day?
Who?
Our boy Trent Forrest.
He was?
Trent Forrest was on the roster. Yeah, I didn't think that. But I just saw him.
So
I wouldn't have recognized his name. Now I do, because he waved goodbye to the Summer League team.
That's crazy. But he's so good that he's back at Summer League the next
They had their full complement of the players, and the Mavericks started Luka, Dorian, Maxey, Richardson, and Melli. Nicolo Melli got the start in that game because they wanted the shooting there, and the Mavericks ended up winning that game. They played it like a playoff game. Brunson, Hardaway, Dwight Powell were the only ones that played off the bench. And Porzingis didn't play in that one, and Mavericks ended up winning. So, but do the Mavericks match up well? Do they beat the Jazz? Because I think they would have.
Well, notice how they beat the Jazz without KP. They went small. How did the Clippers beat the Jazz? They went small. So for Dallas, I think there's a couple players that you look at for Dallas coming out of the playoffs. There are 3 players that we're looking at and saying, man, the storylines and narratives around KP, Jalen Brunson, and Josh Richardson, they're not the greatest coming out of the playoffs, out of that series against the Clippers. What of those 3 players, does one of those players have a different narrative against the Jazz? Does Jalen Brunson have a great series against Utah? And you're like, dang, okay, this was this coming out party on the playoff stage. Does Kristaps Porzingis pull Rudy Gobert away from the rim? Let's just say they put Rudy on KP and they don't put, Rudy on Dorian in the corner or whatever. Like, does KP have a much better series? Because take all of your KP criticism aside, literally the worst matchup for KP in the playoffs was the Clippers. Like, the worst matchup for him. So what if he did go against another traditional center in the playoffs, in a playoff series? Because we've only seen him against the Clippers both years, which the bubble series wasn't a bad series. He just got hurt. But this past year was rough. They stuck him in the corner, all that. We know all of that. But what if they snuck past the Clippers in that series, and then they play Utah, and he has an incredible series? And Rudy Gobert, he's away from the basket. KP's hitting a bunch of threes each game. Changes that narrative. What if Josh Richardson steps up, hits some threes, but more importantly, guards Donovan Mitchell for a series? And you're like, dang, that's why they got him right there. Those are like 3 what-if narratives for some Mavs players that could drastically change their careers, kind of.
One of the reasons why the Mavericks won that game against the Jazz in April was because Luka was 6 of 11 from 3. Dorian went 5 of 12 from 3. That was huge. He just kept taking threes because, like you mentioned, Gobert was guarding Dorian instead of guarding, anybody else. And they were basically just letting Dorian shoot. He was just letting him out there, and Gobert decided to guard the rim and let Dorian just be out there. And so he got to shoot 12 threes, the most on the team. Brunson went 4 of 7 from 3. Hardaway went 3 of 7 from 3. And Josh Richardson went 5 of 5 from 3 as well in this game. So some of those things are definitely not sustainable. I don't know Josh Richardson shooting 100% from 3 in a playoff series against the Jazz, but yeah, what if Josh Richardson had a really good series and Porzingis had a pretty good series, like a really good series? Would that have completely changed the narrative on these guys? Let's say they did. What are we thinking about Josh Richardson? Are we still like, he has to be gone, let's just trade him for nothing, a traded player exception and a young player? Like, are we still saying that?
I know that's the end. Do they still try to dump his contract if he has an incredible series? I mean, if he literally guards Donovan Mitchell in that series and they beat the Jazz. Remember, the Jazz lost to the Clippers in 6 games in that series. Like, it's kind of mind-boggling.
And Kawhi didn't play at the end, remember?
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of mind-boggling that they're bringing back that same squad, basically with like Rudy Gay.
They added Rudy Gay, come on, and Hassan Whiteside, come on.
Oh well, they're in the finals next year, Kawhi didn't play the last 2 games, by the way. I forgot about that. He was kind of limited in game, in game 3, I guess he was, or game 4, he was okay. And then the last 2 games he didn't play. The Clippers won those ones anyway. But this is a question I have. How they beat the Jazz the last time they played them in the regular season. When KP didn't play, they went small. The Clippers beat the Jazz when they went small. Would Rick finally have said, we're going small because we're going to beat the Jazz? And that's what we wanted for the Clippers. It never happened. Would he have said it, put it down and said, we beat them in the regular season by going small. That's how we're going to beat them. If it caught, like, would that have been the case? I don't think so. I don't think they would have ever went small.
Coming up, let's get into some off-season type questions. What would the Mavericks have looked like if they got past the Jazz and something else? And then maybe their season ended there against the Suns or something. And then what would the Mavericks off-season have looked like if they had won that elusive first-round series or even a second-round series and got there? Let's talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're absolutely delicious. We love them. I eat them all the time. I love the raspberry one. The raspberry and the cherry bar C are sneaky ones that I really like. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar in a bar covered in 100% chocolate. They're great. Check them out. They have all kinds of deals all the time. You can compare them to other kinds of protein bars that have 190 to 350 calories and have a bunch of fat in them and net carbs. Listen to this. That Gatorade bar, 33 grams of carbs. You've been doing keto. That is like an insane amount of carbs. Built Bar, 4 net grams of carbs, net carbs in there. That is absolutely wild. Some of the sugar of some of these other ones, just look at this next to a candy bar. I had a Reese's cup today. 21 grams of sugar in the Reese's cups, in 2 cups. 4 grams of sugar in a Built Bar. That's insane. That's absolutely wild. Go check out Built Bar. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order with Built Bar. Also want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is the best place to put down some money on sports. They have all kinds of football stuff. MLB still going on. They have everything that you could want. Coach of the year for NBA. Steve Kerr plus 800. Steve Nash plus 900. Billy Donovan plus 1,200. Eric Spoelstra plus 1,200. Interesting. The top 4. Which one of those are you feeling? Kerr, Nash, Donovan, Spoelstra.
Not Billy Donovan.
No.
Steve Nash.
Steve Nash is a really interesting one. If you get a healthy net season, that could be absolutely wild. Rick Carlilse or Jason Kidd, who has better odds to win Coach of the Year next year, according to BetOnline?
Rick Carlilse.
Rick Carlilse plus 1,400. Jason Kidd plus 1,600. Not too far down. That's right in that next round. Quinn Snyder, Nate McMillan have the same odds as Jason Kidd to win Coach of the Year next year. Use the promo code LOCKDOWN. Get a 50% welcome bonus. Your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into some more about this.
What if?
About the Dallas Mavericks. We're talking about this past playoffs, the 2021 playoffs, and the game 3 specifically. If the Mavericks had won that game, what would have happened? We think that the Mavericks would have won the series. They go on, they play the Jazz. Maybe they beat the Jazz, but even if they don't beat the Jazz, they won that first round series. They went into the season saying, we want to win a playoff series. And then they go do that. How does the offseason look different now?
Does it matter to free agents? Does it show a Kyle Lowry or any other bigger free agents that, hey, this Mavericks team just isn't a one and done team in the playoffs. Like if they win a first round series and they beat, not just win a first round series, if they beat the Clippers by putting KP in the corner and Luka Doncic in supporting cast beats Kawhi and Paul George, a healthy Kawhi at that point too.
Yeah.
In the first round.
A dominating Kawhi.
Does that show free agents across the league that this Mavericks team is on the brink? Like they're on the edge of a title. Like they are close. They're closer than what maybe some players think they are now, even though that, hey, they're probably, however close you think they are. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Does Kyle Lowry still go to Miami because of his friendship with Jimmy Butler and it's South Beach? Probably so. But like, how does it impact any other big free agent name? I think that's a question that you have to ask. And I think on the flip side to the Clippers, is Kawhi gone? Like if Kawhi loses that series, is he still re-upping at that point? I mean, I don't know.
Probably.
Does he have the knee injury?
I was gonna say, does he get hurt if they get knocked out? Oh my gosh, this is a wild what if. Now all of a sudden Kawhi is healthy or pretty healthy going into this offseason. Does that change the calculus for him? Because then all of a sudden he's out with the Clippers. That team just seems, I don't know. All of a sudden this
Probably out.
So okay, no, but all of a sudden this Clippers team lost after going up 3-1 to the Nuggets in the second round the year before, and then in the first round to the Mavericks that year, like a not superior Mavericks, like a worse Mavericks team than the Clippers, just on paper and all that experience, everything.
Yeah,
those would be two extremely disappointing years. Does Kawhi leave after that? Because personally, if I'm looking at that roster, I'm saying, I don't know if I can get this done here.
Yeah, I mean, if he's saying, we couldn't get past the Mavericks in the first round, and that's
I can't beat either of these two European dudes, Jokic or Luka. Just can't beat them, right? Like at least beat Luka the year before, and he comes back and beats me next year.
His supporting cast couldn't and he's fully healthy, like you said. I mean, does he stay in LA? I mean, you guess so, but I don't know if he's fully healthy at that point. I think there's a question too for the offseason for Dallas. If they win that next series, or they win that first round series and they play Utah, let's just say they lose against Utah and it's just one more round. Does that affect the futures of Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlisle? What happens with them?
Because the Reliably stuff is still a thing. That still happens.
Exactly.
All that stuff, the power struggle with Cuban and all that stuff, that still happens. And the Luka stuff with Reliably still happens. And the Luka stuff with Carlisle, is it as bad? Can they talk themselves into, all right, let's just try one more year? Maybe Rick talks himself into, okay, I think we may have a championship team here. Can he talk himself into one more year with the team? Or do they still make the move? And now all of a sudden you're talking about like predestination versus like post-trib, mid-trib, like depending on what you believe, you think that either
Calvinism versus Arminianism.
This is what this is, because some people just believe it was a done deal. Cuban was already ready to move on from Donnie Nelson after the season and after the draft and all that. After seeing the rookies and all that kind of stuff, he's just like, I'm done with this. And Rick was done already because he didn't want to be on the hot seat. And so some people think it was predetermined that it was already going to happen. But I don't know. I think I kind of believe that they would have both stayed.
Then I think they're both out.
If they go into the season, they accomplished the one goal that they set out for.
Yeah.
And it's a successful season, which, we debated a lot. What would be a successful season for the Mavericks if they won that first round series? And they did that. It's a successful season, and they still lose both the GM and the coach. That's insane.
I think they do, because I think Donnie was the precursor to Rick. I think the writing on the wall was there for Donnie, whether we agreed with it or not. And I think once Rick saw that Donnie was gone, I think, Indiana came calling pretty quick. So
Rick leaving is like when Michael Scott left the office and Ryan Howard was sitting there and he was like, I got away with a lot under the last regime. And now all of a sudden they're going to bring in somebody new and my life is going to completely change. And I don't know if I want to be about that. Like he's like, I want somebody to come in and lead me, but lead me when I want to be led. That was Ryan Howard's quote.
Because Rick still had his stuff he still had his tension with Luka. We all know that they were never best friends. Like the Volquera stuff was still going, was going on before everything that was going to affect Donnie's future. So like that, I tend to think that would have still happened. I think it gets spicier to where if they made like a finals run. So let's just say they beat Utah.
Yeah.
And they got past Utah, and they played Phoenix in the conference finals.
Is this Phoenix team that good that they would?
And Chris Paul misses two games in that series because of the COVID situation. So
yeah, if you're still predeterminism, you believe that Chris Paul still gets COVID.
If does a healthy Dallas team beat a Phoenix team without Chris Paul for 2 of those games in the series?
Because that Suns team only beat the Clippers without Kawhi the whole series. Like it, yeah. I mean, and it took them 6 games to do it. I mean, I don't believe that Suns team was that good that they would just roll over the Mavericks or that they would beat the Mavericks.
Dorian on Booker would have been fun, for an entire
Richardson
series.
Probably, or Richardson on Chris Paul.
Yeah, I guess some of that. I mean,
the Ayton versus Porzingis matchup of which of our bigs, like does man, that'd be
the
wild,
Suns, Luka narrative, all of that. Who Mikal Bridges would have guarded Luka, which is a great, matchup.
That would have been tough. He's one of the best at defending Luka in the whole league.
Yeah, Jay Crowder back in Dallas, all of that. And
can they beat the Bucks? Let's say they beat the Suns. Can they beat the Bucks? We'll end on this.
No.
You still think the Bucks win?
Yeah, I do.
The Mavs go to the finals. Do Donnie and Rick still leave?
That's the question. That's what I don't know. Does Donnie and Rick are they still here in Dallas if they go to the Western Conference Finals or they go to the finals?
Do they go to the finals and then all of a sudden does Kyle Lowry still go to the Heat, who just got swept in the first round in the East?
That's a good point.
Or go to the team that just made the finals in the Western Conference.
I don't know. South Beach does look pretty nice.
It's pretty nice. Maybe
the Trinity River, South Beach, Hawaiian Falls, South Beach.
That's about the same. There you go. That's our
what if
about the Dallas Mavericks. All kinds of different things. Let us know in the comments what you think. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.